Some of you may know that 2 weekends ago was the annual boat race that happens every year, every spring, between Oxford and Cambridge, and it happens over on the Thames River in London, England. And no big deal. It's only coming up on 200 years of tradition, but it's a big deal if you're in the rowing community. And if you happen to live in London, England, right, thousands of people come out and line that river and they watch 4 races go by. So they've got men's and women's spares, so the second level athletes, and then men's and women's varsity, so the top tier. And they race 4 miles. So holy Bob. And if you're familiar with rowing, you know that it is, it's 20 minutes of being incredibly uncomfortable, right? So it's basically oxygen debt for 20 minutes. And if you've ever experienced that, you know that, there aren't many things in life more painful. And I don't say that to say, rowers are super tough. I just say that to give that some perspective. It's side-by-side racing, and it just doesn't get any more challenging than that, perhaps. So this year's race was good racing as well. And some years, it's crews get blown off the water, so there's quite a discrepancy between first and second. But the race that I was intrigued by the most this year was the women's race, the women's varsity race. And the reason being was because they had a new coach and sort of a new lot of athletes. They were young and inexperienced and certainly the underdogs. And their new coach, and I think his name was Paddy Ryan. I wonder, a little bit Irish maybe. And so lots of experience as an athlete, lots of experience as a coach. This is his new gig. And 7 months ago when he met with his girls, he introduced the challenge for the year in a very unorthodox way. So what he said to those young women was that he challenged them to build a high performance culture around the notion of caring. And that's pretty cool, right? That would be unusual, right? Certainly based on my experience. Other than the usual, take no prisoners, knock the crap out of one another, it's a war, get out there and win, you're not worthy unless you win, all that kind of usual jargon. This gentleman chose a different path to build a culture not based on winning or losing, but based on how well they cared for one another and the level of safety they could create, where it was safe to fail. They were encouraged to try new things and to care for one another, right? And embrace the notion of racing for one another in that boat, right? And racing with competitors as opposed to against. And so anyhow, spoiler, if you want to go watch it, you can on YouTube. But what happens is in the beginning part of the race, Oxford jumps out ahead and looks like they're going to do as predicted and win the race. These Cambridge girls settle down, establish a really good, powerful, long rhythm, and just one stroke at a time start to chunk through the Oxford crew until they're out front. And then, invariably in a head style race or even in a 2,000 meter race, once you've broken contact, it's usually where crews disappear. And it happened here, right? The Cambridge crew just kept on sailing, and they won quite comfortably. What I loved about it was was sort of the post-race interviews where these athletes described a culture they had never experienced before. They had never been so close with their teammates. They had never felt like they were racing for something other than themselves. They felt more compelled to race for the athletes, in front and behind them than their usual ticket, which was, I'm out there to win for me. And I just thought that was beautiful. Now, those of you who have watched my videos, or read my Substacks, you know that love is a huge part of what we talk about here. And so the idea of a caring culture, certainly pretty darn good. I'm not going to complain about that. But what I was confused by, I guess, or curious about, how about that, was that, why stop at caring? And And the reason being, for me anyhow, and this isn't a complaint or a criticism, right? It's just that I see a caring culture as sort of a doing culture, right? It's a verb. You have to do things, you have to execute things in order to be perceived as caring. Whereas I see a loving culture as more of a being culture. It's who you are being in front of your athletes. It's how you show up to them. It's how they receive you, and how you receive them. And through a loving culture, certainly caring is a byproduct, but it's not the end game. It's not the only thing you're shooting for. And when I coached in my second iteration, and I certainly came from a traditional coaching paradigm where it was all about the win, take no prisoners, knock the crap out of anybody who showed up beside you, get out ahead and stay there, all that kind of usual rowing jargon, right? But in my second iteration, I had one of those meetings with the athletes I was coaching, except I used the word love, not care. And I said, I understand that you want to be the fastest crew in the nation, and I totally get that. But the ticket to that result is love, right? We're going to build a loving culture. On the other side of love is your potential. That's where you will reach your potential. And the reason I believe love more than caring is because you establish a deeper bond, you establish deeper trust, the connection between the crew is deeper, and the result of all that is a more powerful and sustainable force that, holy smokes, when that gets ignited, look out. It is, it's super impressive. And I've coached many crews like that, and it's been exciting to watch them perform, right? They've been exceptional. But it wasn't the winning that we set out to accomplish. It was building a loving culture. And so, again, it's not like I was disappointed by what this coach had to say, that he chose caring. It's just that I thought, why didn't you go one step further? And so, maybe next year, I can dream. He's going to meet next year's crew in September and say, this year we're going to establish a crew and a high-performing culture built around the notion of love. And that would be something to tune into and see how it goes. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. So speaking of love, share the love with yourself, with what you do, with those you do it with, and take care of yourselves. And we'll see you here next week. Okay, Oakley and Bella and I are gonna make our way home, and have a great weekend. We'll see you again. Okay, bye everybody. Bye-bye.